Zendesk is a customer service and engagement platform. Globally, more than 125,000 businesses now rely on Zendesk. We have companies like Airbnb, Slack. There's a whole variety of different companies that use Zendesk to do a better job of customer service. Melbourne's very different to what it was when I left in '96. I moved back in April of 2015. Before that, I was in the US for 20 years, 10 years in Silicon Valley, and then 10 years on the East Coast. Back in '96, I'd already done 2 startups by that point here in Melbourne, and people had no idea what it was we were talking about. Coming back, there was a startup scene, there was meetups all over the place, and even the government had started getting involved in trying to foster the ecosystem. When I first arrived back in Melbourne, I didn't have much of a local network, and folks in Victorian government were able to very quickly plug me into a lot of the local ecosystem players. One Sunday afternoon, I think I ended up with 65 email introductions made by a government person on my behalf, and it took me like 2 months to follow up on all of them. So if we talk about the technology folks, we've been able to build our machine learning and artificial intelligence hub here in Melbourne. And globally, all of our machine learning technology is built and delivered out of this office. There's a lot of great talent coming out of the university system. It is a little more difficult to find more senior talent, and that's probably part of the reason that when Zendesk was looking to expand our presence in Melbourne, they actually went hunting and found me living in Boston and convinced me to move back to Melbourne to take this role. And that's largely because there still isn't perhaps the history of technology in this city, which means we don't necessarily have folks who've grown companies to scale, in the local environment. I actually think that's a great opportunity for other US-based executives to consider moving to Melbourne and helping grow an operation in this city, basically as I have done, and it's been a lot of fun. Silicon Valley can at times be a very hard-charging kind of environment. There's a very strong emphasis on work-life balance and on sustainability here in Melbourne. You only have to look at our food scene. I mean, the quality of food, the restaurants in Melbourne are phenomenal. The same, of course, is true with our coffee. San Francisco has, I think to its credit, so we see real coffee now in the US, but Melbourne's been doing that for years. So there's some simple things, but I do think there's some other parallels there in terms of the things we value. As a company, globally, we also value work-life balance, and so that aligned really, really well here in Melbourne. A colleague of mine in San Francisco, when I asked him if he'd be willing to come back to Melbourne after a 3-month tour he'd done, helping us grow this office, he said, "Oh, absolutely. I'd come back to Melbourne in a heartbeat." Melbourne is everything that San Francisco was supposed to be and wasn't quite. So yeah, life at Zendesk in Melbourne is pretty good because we get to collaborate with San Francisco, and yet we get to live here.
Melbourne Tech City, Australia. Tomorrow starts here.